My name is Jerry Lee Lewis. The first music I heard growing up in Faraday was at a little small Assembly of God church where we used to go to church. And that's where I heard my music. Well, I never got caught up just in music in the church. I think I was caught up in music when I was born. I just I heard music in church. I heard music on street corners. I heard these people sitting around Faraday, Louisiana on street corners just picking the blues and the old guitars, these were colored people, and they were laying something down I liked. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was good, and I had to get involved with it. I knew that. I was just a child then. Strolling through my Stellar Calhoun, my Uncle Lee Calhoun's home, they had a piano. They were the only people that had a piano in that part of the country. And I walked up to this piano and I picked out a tune. I played Silent Night on it. And my mother walked by and was listening, and she told my dad, she said, Elmo, he's going to be a natural born pianist. And Dad said, yeah, he might be a piano player. And so there's a difference in a pianist and a piano player. I don't know. We're still working on that one. Well, my mother and dad, they mortgaged the home to buy me a piano. I was 8 years old at the time. And they bought me one of these big old Stark pianos, self-player piano. They used to play this, and it was redone back into a piano, and it was the greatest sounding piano I ever heard in my life. I would imagine any piano would have sounded that good to me at the time. And I lived with that piano. I sat on that piano stool 5, 6, 7 hours a day in and day out, up until I was 21 years old. I loved it. I worshiped it. Everything I done, I taught myself. Every note, I taught myself. Every key I felt like it was right for my voice, I used it. And I stayed with it. And I'm still doing that. Well, I was anywhere from 9 to 10 to 12, 13 years old at the time. Strolling down through the Haney's big house was in the colored part of town, and it was the place was owned by my Uncle Lee Calhoun. He owned Louisiana nearly, and he owned and Haney. Mr. Haney himself was a big colored man. He was a great big man, big as a door, and he could just pick you up and sell you like a football if he wanted to, and he run the place. And he caught me in there a few times to put me out. But he said, boys, if your Uncle Lee Calhoun caught you in here, your mama or daddy caught you, he'd kill me. And I'd sneak back in again. But it was great. It was like I said a while ago, it was like, to me at the time, it would be like strolling through a part of heaven. Just the musically speaking, And even the people. Everybody, everything. It was all just. It was a happening, man. It was a birth. It was giving birth to a new music that people needed to hear and needed to know. Put a beat to it and sum it up to. They called it blues. They called it hillbilly. They called it rockabilly. And finally, we determined that rock and roll. And that's the name of the game, rock and roll. That's what it was. That's what I was listening to, even in church. Mostly what I liked was boogie-woogie music. That's what I really got into. I loved the boogie-woogie, the old raunchy boogie-woogie music, like the similarity to the Tommy Dorsey boogie-woogies mixture. That smooth boogie taken with raw talent like mine, for instance, and put to the test with real sharp people like Tommy Dorsey, who were great musicians, could read music, and they knew music. And I never got into that. I just taught myself. And they called it raw talent. And I guess it still is. Hank Sr. Well, he was a stylist. Like Al Jolson was a stylist. Jimmy Rogers was a stylist. Hank Williams was a stylist. They could do any kind of music. They done it their way. They set the styles. And I don't know. There's a lot of singers and a lot of guitar players and there's a lot of piano players and a lot of this and there's a lot of that. But I will say, and it's no brag. It's just fact. There's four stylists that's been in the world that I've known since I've been living. Was Al Jolson, Jimmy Rogers, Hank Williams, and Jerry Lee Lewis. Now, whether that's a blessing or a curse, that's still debatable. But that's the way it is. And I didn't make it that way. God did. Well, I never figured a six-string instrument to compare with an 88-string instrument. That just didn't impress me that much. I was picking guitar pretty good when I was, I don't know, 6, 7 years old. I could pick pretty good guitar. But the piano was fascinating to me, and I knew that was the instrument that I wanted to play and get into, because it was the classy instrument. And it took a long time for people to get the piano put out in front on the stage. It was always somebody with a guitar in their hand, making a chord. As long as they could make a key of G or E and sang a little bit, they were a hit. But to prove yourself to be a hit on a piano was hard to do back in those days in the 50s to get started. I remember very well a thing called Blue Moon of Kentucky. I was riding along in the car and I heard it coming on the radio, and I reached up and turned the speaker up on the car. I said, "Daddy," I said, "now there is music. There, yeah, now you're hearing something." He said, "Yeah, we are. That's it." Yeah. He was singing Blue Moon of Kentucky, rock and roll style. I mean, Bill Black on that bass, Scotty Moore on guitar, and it was fantastic, and it was new, it was fresh, and I knew it was something, it had to happen. And if I would have been close to Sam Phillips' place here, as close as Elvis would, I'd have been kicking that door down at the age of 12. From Faraday, Louisiana to Memphis in 1956. Well, I was reading a lot of magazines about Sam Phillips, Sun Records, who started Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Carl Perkins. And I told my dad, I said, "This is the man we need to go see." And we did. We drove down from Faraday, Louisiana into Memphis here and pulled up in front of Sun Records here and came in and auditioned for Jack Clement, who said I could never make it playing piano. If I could play guitar, I might have a chance. He said, but rock and roll was out for me because Elvis had it tied up. I could forget that. I said, well, I don't think so. And I said, I'm a hit. He said, they all say that, son. They all say that. I said, yeah, but I'm not all. I'm different. He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, you're going to have to cut a little demo for me here for Mr. Phillips to listen to, being that he's on vacation in Florida. And he didn't want to do it, but I kind of forced him into it, so to speak. It's like I had a chance to talk with Elvis one time up here. And it was the first time I met Elvis. He drove down here to meet me. And we closed the session out. We sang a long time. I think there's a picture back there of me and him and Johnny and Carl. And the last thing I said to Elvis as he was walking out the door, we'd been playing and jamming for about 5 or 6 hours, 3 or 4 hours, something like that. I asked him, I said, Elvis, I want to ask you one thing before you leave. This is on my mind. I just like to know, if you died, do you think you'd go to heaven or hell? And his eyes got real big, and he looked at me and he said, Jerry, don't you ever ask me that again or ever say that to me again. I said, you got it. And I didn't. I didn't mean anything by it because I knew he was raised in the same church I was. And I just wanted his opinion of what he thought about it. And apparently it scared him, I think. I know it had me scared, and it still does. He's just like I was, crazy, like a fox. Elvis Presley. He was an entertainer. He was an entertainer's entertainer. He was a professional. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And he was a good person. I don't know, Elvis lived kind of in a world of his own. He liked his privacy, and that's his business. To me, that was his business. And to me, I just like to get out and rock in front of everybody. I'd make every joint in town and go through every 3-2 beer joint, fight my way in, fight my way out. And Elvis, he wouldn't do that. He's kind of scared of that. He told me, he said, Jerry, he said, you going to get killed. Somebody going to kill you doing that. I said, nah, they ain't going to get me. And he wouldn't venture. But we had good times together anyway. Right, I walked into the wagon wheel one night. I was running late I worked there. And I had Mr. Paul Whitehead on. He played piano himself, and he played trumpet and accordion on Friday and Saturday night. He would play trumpet and accordion. I heard Johnny Littlejohn playing drums, and he was doing and singing a whole lot of shaking going on. Mr. Paul was playing the piano. And I stood there and listened to it, and I'd done it pretty close to the exact way he done it, word for word. The way he said, stand it in one spot and wiggle it around a little bit. I said, man, that is fantastic. I said, that's a hit. If I ever put on record, that could be a hit. And I knew that had to be recorded when I heard that. And I recorded it, and I put it down that way. And Sam said it never would happen because it was too vulgar and too risque. I didn't know what the word risque meant at the time, but I learned. And it was a hit record. To make a long story short, it was a big one. Well, that goes back to Mr. Judd Phillips, who convinced Sam, his brother, that when he heard me, he said, we got the biggest artist in the world here if you want to. Explore him on national television, expose him on national television, explore him. I ought to explore him too, but expose him on national television with a song. He said, well, it'll be me, the flip side. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll do a whole lot of shaking. And we wasn't even sure where we could even get on a television show, much less do a song on Ed Sullivan show or Steve Allen show. Well, we got turned down by Ed Sullivan, but we got in to see Mr. Steve Allen, and he heard me do a whole lot of shaking going on. I just took my bubble gum out of my mouth and laid it up on the piano. And my funny book, and I laid it down, I was reading, and I done a whole lot I was 20 years old. And I played a whole lot of shaking going on. He was tapping with his pencil, like he's playing drums. I knew I had him. He said, I want you doing that song on my show Sunday night, word for word, just exactly the way you're doing it now. And that record busted wide open, man. They had to build 2 new plants to keep up with shipping that record. That record was selling over 300,000 records a day. Well, it was a lot different than it is now. The roads were a lot different. The cars were a lot different. It was a lot rougher. It was rough. But I'm sure it was more rougher and rougher back when Hank Williams and them had to travel in rough days. There wasn't as many hotels and motels and things, but they were beginning to reflourish the hotels and things back then. And like we done a tour, my first tour I done was Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins, Sonny James and Wanda Jackson, and Marvin Rainwater. It was a 30-day tour all up through Canada. And we was making $100 a day. And so I took $50 and I gave J.W. and Russ $25 a piece. And that was big money, we thought. We left home, I had over $100 in my pocket. When we got back, I had less than $75. And a wore-out car. Had a brand new car and I had a wore-out car. And believe it or not, in Canada, it was nothing but gravel roads. This was in 1956, early 56. And there was rocks flying 100 miles high. I mean, there we were, Johnny Cash and this big Lincoln, 56 Lincoln, was rolling at 100 miles an hour. I mean, we was in this 57 Buick just rocking. There was Carl in this 56 Fleetwood Cadillac that Sam bought for him and surprised him with it and deducted it out of his record royalties. And those were great days. It was a great experience, and you know, they said that, well, you're not making a lot of money, Jerry, but you're getting a lot of exposure. That's the way the promoters used to tell you. Rock and roll is the greatest music it's ever been. It ever will be. Whether it was taken from gospel roots or whether it was taken from rhythm and blues roots or black roots, or red roots, or blue roots, or whatever roots, rock and roll is rock and roll. And you're not going to beat rock and roll music. If you do, I want to hear it. I want to really hear something then. And there was a few cats like James Dean, Elvis Presley, and Jerry Lee Lewis that was rebel enough to come through.
Jerry Lee's second movie, High School Confidential, was released in May 1958. It was never going to win an Oscar, but it might have done better if the news of his marriage to his 13-year-old cousin hadn't broken just as the movie hit the drive-ins. And now, here's the preview for High School Confidential.
Shaking at the high school hop, bobbing at the high school hop. Well, everybody stopping, everybody hopping, bobbing at the high school hop. Yeah!
Do you belong in my class?
And you belong in my class, too, dog. You know, for a teacher, pretty cool. Why don't we cut out and go to your pad and live it up, huh?
These are not underprivileged kids from broken homes. Actually, they're the overprivileged. Teenage rebels, too young to be careful, too tough to be afraid.
You know, I lost one of these things in the principal's office. I don't want to lose another one in one of your bellies.
The generation. Young savages from nice families. This is their story. High School Confidential. This is also the story of adults in the know who exploit the kids for their own ends.
He's healthy and normal and full of fun. You know what I mean, too. Don't tell me you never rode a hot rod or had a late date in the second balcony. Or maybe you haven't.
The lost generation? Hardly. They don't care if they're the last generation. They want their kicks now.
Now look, you guys, say nothing. Don't even give the fuzz the right time of day.
All right, come shake it up tonight. Bobbing at the high school hop, shaking at the high school hop, bobbing at the high school hop. Well, everybody stopping, everybody hopping, bobbing at the high school hop. Yeah! too hard.